Hey everybody, today is the battle of the ultimate extreme off-roaders. We've got two very special vehicles for you. We've got the Jeep Wrangler, but not just any Wrangler, the Wrangler 392 with the Extreme Recon package going up against the Ford Bronco, but not just any Bronco, the Bronco Raptor. And in this video, we're gonna take the two of these off-road to over 12,000 feet above sea level. We're going all the way up there in the Rocky Mountains and hopefully not get struck by lightning. Now, of course, I can't do this video alone, so with me is a special guest, Ben.
I'm on TFL, Mom. That's all I gotta say.
So this is Ben Hardy. He is a YouTube legend, and that is actually your Jeep, and he's gonna let me drive it, which is so cool. But tell me, why this Jeep? This video is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road, our go-to off-road trail navigation app. You can do really cool stuff like download offline maps ahead of time, so when you're way up in the Colorado Rockies, way out of cell service, you know exactly where you're at. Plus, it integrates with Apple CarPlay, which is super useful.
So the reason that I picked this particular Jeep is, first off, Tuscadero was a limited edition color that they only had for the 2022 model year, and if I'm gonna do a special Jeep, I have to do it in a special color. Now, I was actually torn between the 2.0 and the 6.4 Hemi with the Jeep. I know it sounds crazy, but I thought that the 2.0 might be a little bit more economical. But what I found is with the Extreme Recon package, the 392 gets as good, if not better fuel economy than the 2.0. And, well, it sounds amazing and it's insanely fast.
If you're okay with it, Ben, I'll let you drive this Bronco Raptor, because you haven't had a lot of seat time in this yet.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And I actually have never driven a 392 on the Extreme Recon, so we're going to take these two rigs and try to beat the rain. So Ben, thank you for making the long trek out to Colorado. You're from Utah, and what do you think of Colorado? Do you like our trail network?
Yeah, it basically is similar to what we have in Utah, but a lot prettier because we have a lot more desert.
Yeah, we got these really big dramatic mountains, and I think we're right around 9,000–10,000 feet above sea level right now, and we're going up to like 12, so we're going pretty high today in the Colorado Rockies. Now, what are your first impressions of that Bronco Raptor?
So initially on road, I was kind of concerned because of the size, but I got used to it over time. Off-road, I'm absolutely loving these Fox shocks because unlike the Wrangler where I kind of get jostled all over the place, this is just smooth.
That Raptor is something like 8 inches wider than a standard Bronco, and it's got long travel suspension. It's got these big,
long control arms, and it gives you a very smooth ride on-road and off-road, and certainly for higher speed stuff, that would be my choice. You also have independent front suspension, which is going to make a pretty big difference on kind of head toss side to side.
Yeah, how is that solid axle on the highway going from lane to lane?
You know, the Jeep Wrangler on-road, especially over expansion joints, does get a little bit discombobulated, but I have to say that the Extreme Recon package is kind of a game changer. I really love the floatiness of it, and I know that's probably controversial. You maybe you have different opinions, but I kind of love how it walls around a little bit because you hit bumps and it just simply floats over everything.
Yeah, and I think those bigger tires help out quite a bit too because they're kind of like an extra shock absorber, especially when you compare it to the regular 392 with the dinky little 33s.
Speaking of tires, by the way, the Extreme Recon is an option package on top of a lot of Wranglers. It gives you a
2-inch lift, and then it gives you factory 35-inch tall tires, which would have been absolutely nuts just a few years ago, but that Raptor's on bigger tires altogether.
Yeah, I've got 37s here, and we actually have the exact same size of wheel. We're both running on 17-inch wheels that are both beadlock capable, and so I'm winning when it comes to sidewall.
Now, I will say, on kind of like medium trail running like we're doing right now,
the ride in the Raptor is a little better, right? So when you hit a bump in the Jeep, because the wheels are tied together on each end via an axle, you do kind of get a little bit of side-to-side motion, which is a little bit unpleasant over long distances, whereas the Raptor kind of smooths stuff out, especially with that long arm. I mean, if you wanted to take this trail at 30 miles an hour in that Ford, you probably could, but there's one area where this Jeep just kills it, and that is in this engine and this power plant. This thing is an absolute beast.
Yeah, and something that I find interesting is I've got 13.1 inches of ground clearance, and over in the Wrangler, you've got 12.9, but my tires are a lot bigger, so it's interesting that Jeep is able to get so much ground clearance with smaller tires.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that the 2-inch lift that they get this thing really does have a pretty big impact.
So horsepower rating, I think this Jeep is sitting right around 470, right? And the torque is also 470?
Yeah, and out of my boosted V6...
My double snail V6, I've got 418 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque.
So you're certainly down on power on paper. However, the higher we go, right, especially in elevation, the turbochargers do certainly help make up for some of that. But it's the experience of the 6.4 liter Hemi.
Which is really what you're paying the big bucks for. It's got such a progressive power band. The way the engine just starts to scream over 4,000 RPM is one of the most satisfying experiences in the world. And then when you're on the trail, if you have that little exhaust button pushed, you get this low rumble at 1,100, 1,200 RPM even that is just incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, and I will say, even at higher elevations, I've noticed that just because of the size of tires that this has and the time it takes for those turbos to spool up, it does feel quite a bit pokier compared to the Jeep as we were driving up here.
I think that's probably fair. We did drag race the Bronco Raptor against the standard 392, and the standard 392 was significantly quicker. Of course, this one's got the 35, so it's probably going to be a wee bit slower, but I do think that overall this Jeep is more willing to kind of get up the hills with a little bit more oomph than the Ford. Now, from an interior standpoint, which one do you like more?
It's kind of mixed for me. So the Bronco definitely has nicer seats. They're more comfortable, and they hold you in place quite a bit better because of how aggressive these bolsters are. Infotainment screen's a lot bigger. It's got that big 12-inch display, so the camera view's better, and the digital gauge cluster's pretty cool. But the Jeep interior is just so charming because it has this kind of retro feel to it that the Bronco just doesn't seem to capture.
I think the quality materials overall are a little better in the Wrangler, and there are certain aspects where the 392 does give you an improvement over a standard Wrangler. So like you get this thicker steering wheel with the paddle shifters, you get more bolstered seats. You absolutely nailed it on the seats. These are kind of like park benches compared to what Ford offers. But technology-wise, you probably get a little bit more in the Ford. I do like that bigger screen. The 8.4 isn't bad, and it's super usable. But there is certainly a certain level of charm to this, right? The vertical windshield, these big windows. It is not a bad place to spend time, as long as you're not road tripping for like 8+ hours. Now, you road trip this Jeep all the way from Utah. How were your backs doing?
Mine was fine, but my pregnant wife was not a happy camper, and this is the second road trip we've taken this summer.
The last one was in our Raptor, which has pretty similar seats to this Bronco, and she had no complaints there. But with the Jeep, yeah, she said that it's probably not going to be a road trip vehicle in the future.
The thing about both of these from an off-road standpoint is that they will both do more things than you could ever imagine. So they both have front and rear locking differentials. They both have a version of a sway bar disconnect. I mean, they'll both go places that your wallet probably won't want you to go when it comes to risking body damage. So you can't go wrong from either, from just a straight up, off-road standpoint. But they're kind of intended for different things. So this Jeep is certainly more tailored for straight up rock crawling, whereas that Bronco would do a lot better in a desert running situation.
So what do you think of the sound? So they put a lot of work into the sound of that EcoBoost engine with the true dual exhaust all the way back and then the adjustable exhaust modes. Sound pretty good, or do you think it's kind of trombone-like?
So compared to the 392, well, there is no comparison, but compared to the Gen 3 Raptor, it actually sounds quieter, which shocked me because the Bronco doesn't have quite as much sound deadening, but that trombone exhaust in the Raptor is just
so loud, and I noticed especially when you revved both of them, that this just doesn't have the same high-end tone that the Raptor has.
Couldn't agree more. I think you're pretty spot on there.
Now, something else that I find interesting between both of these is actually fuel economy. We've both been averaging about 16, and we both have pretty aggressive axle ratios. I've got a 4.7 rear end, and then you've got a 4.56, which is quite a bit more than the regular 392 that only has a 3.73 axle ratio.
So both of these vehicles are averaging basically the same MPG, 16. And I think part of that, right, is when we were driving up from Denver on the highway, this giant V8 just kind of trundles along at 1800 RPM. It's got so much low-end torque. And then, of course, the EcoBoost makes a lot of power too, but you kind of gotta be in the turbos, and you get Eco or Boost, but it's pretty rare you get both.
Yeah, I noticed that quite a bit on our way up here. What I was having to do is you would kind of go ahead a little bit, and I kept having to punch it, and I noticed I had to have my foot on the throttle for quite some time for this to get up, because it takes quite a bit to move these 37s.
I think transmission-wise, they're probably pretty comparable. I know the 392 is an 8-speed, whereas the Bronco's running a 10. The Bronco does hunt a little bit more for gears than the Jeep, perhaps, but they're both pretty smooth, and depending on the mode, they both do a good job of kind of deciding what gear to be in. And speaking of that, too, we should explain, the Jeep has an Off-Road Plus mode, and that's pretty much it, whereas the Ford has a huge number of modes ranging from Baja to rock crawl to snow to mud and everything in between.
Yeah, and believe it or not, I'm in Baja mode right now because off-road mode walks the rear end, which we don't need for this particular segment. And
the Baja mode still gives us the off-road setting on the dampers, and so it seems like it's actually the best mode for this kind of slow speed crawling.
As I start pushing this to like 8 or 10 miles an hour, things in the Jeep start to get pretty choppy, whereas in the Ford, you're not even starting to feel its capability. Let's talk about some of the things that the Wrangler 392 does better than the Bronco Raptor, because there are a number of pros and cons to each vehicle. Now, you can't talk about the 392 without talking about this engine. This is a ridiculous power plant. 6.4 liters in a narrow body vehicle with solid axles in the front and the back. You put your foot into this throttle and the whole Jeep like cocks to the side as it's fighting against the torque to avoid bending the frame. It's just ridiculous, but even at slower speeds, the sound of this engine is intoxicating. Let me downshift a little bit. You go down in second gear, give it a squirt. Like, it's just the best sounding vehicle I think I've heard in a long time. Of course, Stellantis also makes a Hellcat with a supercharger. Personally, I think the exhaust note out of the standard 6.4 is even better than the 6.2. Now, the downsides, of course, you do have a lot of weight up front, so you are putting a lot of kind of weight over the front axle. And rock crawling, it's not quite as nimble as some other vehicles out there. Other things that I think the Wrangler does better, quite honestly, I like the size of this a lot more. I know the width of that Bronco Raptor is what you want for high-speed desert running, but we don't really live in an area here in Colorado where we have high-speed deserts to run in. So for the vast majority terrain in Colorado, I much prefer the size of the Jeep compared to the Ford. Price-wise, this Jeep is more attractive. Even though this is mid-$80,000 range, which is insane to me for a Wrangler, that Bronco has really yet to hit dealerships, and you know markups are going to be $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It's going to be nuts. So price-wise, this Jeep is where it's at. And another thing I love about the Wrangler is the availability of a bunch of different top options, including the one-touch power top, which I think is just fantastic to be able to push a button and have it open. Ford doesn't offer that on the Bronco Raptor. Jumping into the Ford Bronco Raptor, and this is like the difference between a mid-size truck and a full-size truck. It really does feel very, very big in comparison, but that is not a bad thing in a lot of instances. So daily driving, having this extra shoulder room between yourself and your passenger is a really, really big advantage. And these seats are so much better. They're just way better seats. These are the marine grade vinyl seats, by the way. They're not even the best seats you can get in the Ford, and they're just far better than that in the Jeep. Also the floors. So this has a vinyl floor, and that's an option I wish Jeep offered on the 392. It really is a game changer. Other things I like about the Ford Bronco, well, the locker engagement, way easier, way better, way quicker. You got your hero switches up on the dash. You push the button, rear locker on, push another button, front locker on. Same thing with the sway bar disconnect. It's fast, it's immediate, and it works incredibly well every single time. So the locker engagement, in my opinion, is a big advantage of the Ford over the Jeep Wrangler. 1,103 feet above sea level. Are you feeling it yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably need an oxygen tank in a second.
So the big question is, both rigs made it up here no problem, but which one are you buying?
Well, I already bought the Jeep, obviously, and the reason that I got the Jeep is from a crawling perspective, having the solid axles definitely helps out quite a bit, and I do want to say that the attainability with the Jeep is a little bit better with the Bronco. For the Bronco, initially you had to be handpicked by Ford. Now we don't know what's going to happen for the next model year, but unless you were handpicked by Ford, you won't be able to get one, whereas I can go into any Jeep dealership and order one of these, and I can order one for MSRP or even under MSRP at some dealers. We'll see what happens with the Bronco Raptor in terms of pricing. But overall, they just have two different off-road styles. The Jeep, you're just kind of leisurely crawling up the mountain, whereas this, I want to just punch it and just really take advantage of that long travel suspension.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, they're both expensive rigs, over $80,000 as configured, but in the Jeep, you're paying for that amazing 6.4 Hemi. In the Ford, you're paying for that amazing suspension setup. So Ben, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
Wishlist TFL, no, just kidding. Ben Hardy on YouTube, and then if for some reason you still watch videos on Facebook, then it's Ben Hardy Cars on Facebook.
Yeah, Ben Hardy is the real deal, and a huge thank you to him for making this happen, because it wouldn't be possible without him. But as always, we'll see you on the next video.